After Jayson Tatum's injury Monday night versus the New York Knicks in the Eastern Conference semifinals, the news has come out officially that he has a ruptured or torn Achilles and is most likely going to miss most of, if not all of, the entire 2026 NBA season. So with Jayson Tatum out for the foreseeable future and Boston's window seemingly shortened now with their title runs, what is next for them and what does their future look like without Jayson Tatum? First and foremost, I mean, this is just an absolutely devastating injury to Jayson Tatum. You never want to see any kind of player get an injury of this kind, especially a young superstar like Jayson Tatum, who was ascending his game and entering a new conversation of where he would rank all time within NBA history. A lot of people are saying now that because of this injury and because he's going to be out, that the Jayson Tatum conversational narrative is kind of going to switch. We've been talking a lot of Jayson Tatum is a little overrated. He is not the same caliber as the other guys. He's a little corny. He doesn't actually he's not one of the true top players, all things like that. People are saying that now after his injury that's going to change and he's going to be looked at in a much better light. And that may be the case. But I think that could change very quickly in the other way just as well. Because Jaylen Brown has a lot to prove this season and has an opportunity to prove something to not only himself and to Boston, but to the entire NBA. Last offseason and even the season before that, there was conversations of, man, can Jaylen Brown go somewhere else and be the leader, be a number one guy? Is Jaylen Brown enough to be the number one option on your team? Kind of like we had this conversation with Klay Thompson in like 26, like after 2016, 2017, 15, like around that era. It was like, man, Klay Thompson, best 3-and-D player in the league. Really good number 2 to Steph Curry. Could he be good enough on a team that just needs a push to be the placeholder until someone better comes? Same with like Penny Hardaway when he was with Shaq. Same with Jimmy Butler when he was leaving Chicago. Can these second options, these number 2 guys, go somewhere else and be this number 1 greater star? Jaylen Brown already winning the Finals MVP, and Steve and I have talked about in the past how he is the true playoff Batman when he rises to the occasion. So Jaylen Brown can prove that, hey, we don't need Jayson Tatum to still be competitive. I can be here myself and cover all that just the same. And Jayson Tatum, we have talked about with Boston in general. They're a super team, the most talented roster. Well, not a super team, the most talented roster in the NBA, the best starting 5 in the NBA. They're just so deep with talent that how can any team truly, like in the East at least, compete with them that way? And Jayson Tatum, I think, kind of gets a little bit of, discredit's the wrong word, but because of how good Boston is, it sort of undermines his greatness and how good he is in his own right. So what happens if the Boston Celtics go into this season? Jaylen Brown does, well, this last regular season wasn't the greatest from Jaylen Brown. Let's say Jaylen Brown goes back to doing Jaylen Brown things. Boston stays afloat. Say they're still a top 3 team in the East, which I don't know if they will be or not, but just say they do. Is the conversation then, man, maybe everybody was right. Jayson Tatum isn't that valuable. Jayson Tatum isn't that impactful. Jayson Tatum doesn't bring that much of a difference to your team. Then where does that leave Boston for the rest of their future after he comes back? What do we do with Jaylen Brown? What do we do when Jayson Tatum's contract is up? Is he going to be worth the money? Can we get someone to pair with Jaylen Brown that they can, have a greater combined powers and forces than Tatum and Brown? These are questions and conversations that may be had if it comes to that. Al Horford and Derek Holiday. Al Horford and Drew Holiday, both in their mid to late 30s, not getting any younger, have to eventually do a, not a roster reconstruction, but fill in some new pieces. There's also the unclear future of Kristaps Porzingis. Maybe, and not even with his talent, but like a guy of his size and frame, how many more fully healthy seasons do we see from him? He has a weird, like, lingering illness. What is that all about? Pieces are going to be missing. Boston is going to be forced to take a look at themselves and say, can we make changes, or are changes necessary to get us back to where we were prior to this injury? The East could stack the deck in that time. Say this injury, say it's, let's say 3 years or 2.5 years. Let's say 1 year there's no Tatum. Second year, Tatum is kind of shaky. 3 years, let's say he's back, but the roster is different. You don't have the same continuity or chemistry. Does the rest of the Eastern Conference, who are already kind of close, the Knicks, the Pacers, even throw in, my Miami Heat, the Bucks, these teams, do they suddenly stop and say, well, in this short window of Boston being kind of away, can we stack our own rosters, make our own kind of moves, and seize the opportunity? So once we win, build a new team, a new core. Other players maybe want to go there. Boston seems beatable now, because prior to this injury, well, let me back up. During the regular season, Boston seemed really good, but I don't think anyone thought that they were unbeatable per se. Then as we got closer to the playoffs, and Steve and I were guilty of this as well, was like, man, who the heck in the East is going to stop the Boston Celtics and Jayson Tatum? They're just too good. That can very quickly change all of a sudden because of this injury. So Boston has a lot of conversations to be had within their organization. Jaylen Brown has to have a conversation within himself to see if he can prove something to himself in Boston this coming season and in the 2026 season. And who knows? The East could be a completely different landscape by the time comes around, but only time will tell. And of course, we hope Jayson Tatum has a speedy and healthy recovery and gets back on the court as soon as he possibly can. Listen to the sound. I listen to the sound.